concern for my husband's dad's health, I voluntarily offered to move in with his family. My husband, Kevin, was also on board with the idea, yet the outcome was disastrous. I was berated. You think you can live here, you a wife? If you want to use our stuff, pay up. Finally, I was told, my daughter is coming home to give birth. You two are in the way. Get out. Consequently, I was kicked out. How did things end up like this? My name is Emily. I first met Kevin during high school. We were in the same class. To me, he looked handsome, but he wasn't exactly popular with the girls. Kevin was quiet and not proactive. Archery, even back then. I couldn't help but feel he was a waste of potential, and I found myself drawn to him. And in contrast to him, I was the type to take initiative and act on things that piqued my interest. I was pretty active, and usually the one who struck up conversations with reserved him. How should I put this? I guess I'm a people person, or maybe just nosy. Whenever I see someone in need or keeping to themselves, I can't help but reach out. Still, it felt like Kevin never really opened up to me until we graduated. We went our separate ways and lost contact, but about a decade later, we bumped into each other at a reunion. Kevin was still the quiet type, but when I initiated the conversation, he warmed up and smiled. We became closer after that. You're quite the catch. Kevin, got a girlfriend? Or are you already married?
He responded, well, you're the only one saying that, for Emily. Romance isn't exactly my forte.
It seemed he had a string of bad relationships. This reminded me just how much of a waste his passiveness was. I said to him, what's your type? You're definitely a catch. I've always thought so. Let me help you out a bit. So, I took the plunge.
Then, Kevin blushed and said something astonishingly candid. You know, I've been thinking about you, Emily, all this time.
The way he said it made it clear he had mustered a lot of courage to confess. Hearing that, I felt a wave of happiness. So we officially started dating and even got engaged. He treated me with so much love and care, and I was excited to spend the rest of my life having fun with him. But things took a turn when we went to his parents' house to announce our engagement. In retrospect, I hadn't really heard much about his family from Kevin, and I started to sense why during that visit. His parents live there, and he has a sister who got married and moved out last year. That was fine, but what shocked me was Kevin's mom, Sarah.
Upon seeing us, she said, well, so you're the woman Kevin's marrying. Not much to look at, are you?
But I guess you two are a perfect match, both scraping by at the bottom. She said this as it were the most normal thing in the world. My ears couldn't believe what they were hearing. What's more, she even belittled her own son, which was beyond belief.
I looked at Kevin, who whispered, I'm sorry. My mom has always had a sharp tongue.
And now when we walked into the living room, again as this carton, respect, just John was there, actually. And when Mom said to him, "Hey, you, are she serious about for you? Stop daydreaming and get these folks some coffee or something. Fresh brunch.
They're here to say hello, for goodness sake. Richard's toilet a hassle. This is the man's job, you know. Sexy men are just useless sometimes, aren't they?" She just kept on bad-mouthing everyone. I wondered if she was trying to be like some sharp-tongued celebrity, but John didn't say a word. He just quietly made coffee for us, just like she told him to.
It's stash, which friends. As John did manage to say, thanks for coming. Sorry for the commotion.
Azara immediately yelled at him, "You have no business talking." What nerve you have saying that? Just the express means that. Hold up.
There was no sense of a playful banter between husband and wife. The atmosphere felt downright awkward. We quickly wrapped up the visit and left their home. That's on the way back. I asked Kevin, "Your mom's quite the character, huh?"
He gave a wry smile and said, well, she's always been like this. She wants to prove that women should rule the world or something.
However, I agreed with what Kevin said next.
More concerning is my dad. Haven't seen him in a while, but he looks really worn out.
I felt the same way. It was genuinely concerning. From what I gathered, John does have a stable income, but Sarah seems to be siphoning off a lot of his money.
I want new clothes. Give me $500. I'm going out to dinner with friends, so hand over $300. Quicks.
Hey, the bed is getting old, let's get a new one. Kevin mentioned hearing her say that.
When Kevin still lived at home, he used to complain. "My mom is just so wasteful with money."
It's easy to imagine, given how stylish and up-to-date all the furniture and appliances in their house are. But it seemed better when he could still vent about it. Lately, when he occasionally visits, he notices that John is slowly losing weight and doesn't even complain anymore.
As my daughter gets married and moves out, it'll just be the two of us. Then she will settle down. We got past.
John used to think that, picturing until now, Sarah had teamed up with Kevin's sister to fuel her antics. But his sister is also getting married and will be moving out, so Sarah won't have an ally anymore. John hoped things would improve, but it doesn't seem like that's the reality. After hearing all that, I started to genuinely worry about John. I said, he should just put his foot down once and for all. Heck, divorce and living alone might even be a better option at this point.
Nah, it's a tough situation. Dad tried standing up to her once, and Mom went ballistic. I don't think he has the financial stability to divorce and start anew. He's probably drained by Mom taking all his earnings.
It seems resistance is no longer an option, according to Kevin. Given these circumstances, I can't blame Kevin for becoming so passive as a person. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had to change. So I said, hey, what if after we tie the knot, we move in with your parents? I wouldn't mind living with them. I'm genuinely worried about your dad.
That's really kind of you. I've been thinking we should do that too.
So the nurturing side of me and Kevin's concern for his dad were aligned, and we decided to marry and move in with his parents. But once we started living there, the situation was even worse than we had anticipated.
Based when we first mentioned moving in, Sarah was quick to lash out. What else would I live with lowlifes like you?
Arguing with her would just make things worse. So when I tried to calm the situation by saying, I'll help with the chores around the house, she retorted, well, you better. You're staying in my house after all. It was that bad. But I work too, so doing all the chores is quite the ask. Yet, for John's sake, it was a pill I had to swallow.
Kevin also whispered, don't worry.
So, despite the initial shock, that's how our cohabitating life began. But the condescending comments from Sarah never seemed to end.
But you're using my furniture and appliances. I'd like you to pay for it. Even using the microwave costs electricity.
But I suppose lowlifes like you wouldn't get that. That sort of talk can become a daily occurrence.
However, according to Kevin, all the furniture and appliances here were actually bought by my dad. Even the rent for this place is paid by him. And yet she can say stuff like that, even though she doesn't even work.
Even the rent for this place is paid by him. And yet she can say stuff like that, even though she doesn't even work. That's what he muttered. Hearing that made me realize that not just John, but Kevin too, couldn't stand up to Sarah. Yet, given my personality, I'm the type to internalize and tolerate everything she throws my way. These months of living like this haven't brought me any closer to Sarah, but they've definitely improved my relationship with John. We even have more long, heart-to-heart conversations than before. Then I noticed something. John has definitely been eating less. I think the stress from Sarah's daily intimidation might have something to do with it, but the first thing I noticed was that the amount of food he's eating is just too small. However, it seems like John might be feeling a bit better mentally since we've been looking out for his emotional well-being. Though it's subtle, I've noticed that John's appearance has filled out a bit. Both Kevin and I noticed this change and began to feel a shared sense of joy. But just then, the last thing we ever wanted to happen happened when I got home from work. I found Kevin and Sarah in the middle of a conversation. But the vibe I got was that Sarah was clearly overpowering Kevin. When I asked, what's going on? You guys seem to be arguing or something. Sarah then said, I got a call from my daughter Jennifer. She's about to give birth and will be coming back here soon. In other words, it was news that Kevin's sister would be returning home to have her baby. But this means my already difficult Sarah is bound to become even more unbearable. Kevin says his sister, Jennifer, is quite a handful too. After all we've done to take care of John and help him recover while living together, the last thing we need is Jennifer moving in and potentially setting us back. Kevin wasn't showing any enthusiasm toward Sarah's announcement, that's for sure. And it was clear that Sarah was condescendingly dismissing Kevin. On top of that, when Sarah saw me, she said, oh, I almost forgot you were here. Jennifer is bringing a blessing into our lives, and you two will just be in the way. See, what a rotten thing to say. At this point, holding back any resistance from my end is getting tough. And I've come to realize Sarah dotes on her daughter Jennifer and couldn't care less about her son Kevin. She's a total feminist, isn't she? But I wonder if the fact that I'm not blood related makes me less valid in her eyes. Just when I was at my wit's end and felt like I was about to explode, Sarah dropped the final straw that broke the camel's back.
We don't need obstacles here. Aren't you much safe?
Jennifer said she doesn't want you around, especially not with a wife. She said it would be like living in a dump.
Jennifer said she doesn't want you around, especially not with a wife.
That did it. Kevin clenched his fists in anger, and John looked like he was about to burst into tears. But strangely, her words diffused my frustration. So if that's how it's going to be, I'm ready to act.
We'll leave tomorrow then.
So my reply to Sarah was, all right, we'll leave tomorrow then. Kevin and John were both puzzled by my comment, but of course, I had my own plans. After explaining my plan to them later on, both Kevin and John were convinced. Actually, they were more than just convinced. They were pleased and even said they were happy to go along with it. I immediately started making calls to arrange the move. That night, I might have had the first good sleep in a long time in this house probably. This is because I knew I'd finally be free from Sarah's grip. The next day, several large trucks parked in front of my in-laws' house. Sarah was puzzled by the sight, but when several men started coming into the house from the trucks, I welcomed them. Just then, Jennifer also arrived. She probably intended to say goodbye to Sarah before heading back to her own home, but she must have been shocked to see what was unfolding. I mean, the movers loaded all the home's furniture and appliances onto their truck and took everything away. Now the in-laws' house is pretty much empty, just a shell of a building. Really?
A leapover then came to me and said, after a rough estimate, the total will be around $30,000. Is that okay with you?
With a smile. I said yes. Please go ahead. No problem.
The money is so grand. Thank you. We'll take care of it.
And so they loaded up everything and left, leaving Sarah and Jennifer stunned.
We wow, fine, then. Where's all our stuff gone? Now we don't live like this. As Sarah, in her frantic state, turned to John and said, You do something about this.
I went on to share the entire conversation I'd had with John since arriving here. By buying everything from John for $50,000, he now has the financial freedom to find a new place easily. And for me, Sarah is not family, and I've had a long-term relationship with her. Normally, after being treated so poorly, it would be easy for me to push back. And just like John, even though I bought them, I have no need for items that have Sarah's stains on them. That's why I decided to sell them off. I bought everything for $50,000 and then sold it for $32,000. So yay, I'm at a loss of $18,000. But if this turns John's life in a positive direction, it's worth it to me. After all, I also got the ownership of this house and the deal. That must have shocked Sarah. John transferred the ownership of the house to me. He went to that extent because he has no emotional attachment to this house anymore, and if anything, wants to erase memories with Sarah. So the house is now in my name. It'll be on the market next month. After explaining all this, Sarah trembled and confronted me.
Who are you? How can we just casually give that kind of money to my husband? That's what happened to our home. Wait, I'm sure Kat's me. This married.
She might have finally realized her own foolishness, but at this point, I don't care what happens to Sarah and Jennifer. I also checked with John and Kevin, and they both said they don't want anything to do with Sarah and Jennifer anymore. Well, I'll at least answer your first question. Who am I? I'm just an associate professor at a major university hospital heading the psychiatry department. It's really no big deal. I'm just juggling a couple of different roles, you know? But given my personality, this line of work suits me. I enjoy being empathetic and considering people's health and feelings. It was actually fun for me to plan daily nutritious meals for John. Oh, and it's kinda rare for a woman to wear so many hats like I do, so I sometimes get featured on TV. But you, Sarah, you're not interested in understanding people, so I doubt you'd care for those shows. All this has provided me with a substantial income, by the way. With that sassy explanation, Kevin and I left John's place as a parting shot. John handed Sarah divorce papers.
Please, that's the thing. I don't have any asset, and there's really no point in you staying with me.
If you don't sign this, Emily can write a medical report for court, showing that you're the reason my health is suffering. She, who is a psychiatrist, can back that up. Sarah seemed rattled by this and quickly signed the papers. As for what happened afterward, Sarah and Jennifer lost their place to live and somehow managed to move in with Sarah's brother, Teddy. Now, it seems she's also getting an earful from Teddy's wife regularly. He wants the best for Jennifer's unborn child, who isn't to blame for any of this, so they're providing a suitable environment. However, he also tries to make Jennifer reflect on her actions whenever possible. This is for the sake of the coming child. Big owner, and Kevin and I pretty much cut ties with Sarah and are living peacefully. We've even started discussing having kids of our own. I believe that if it's with him, we'd have a wonderful and loving child. As for John, he's now living alone in a small apartment, enjoying some much-needed peace. We occasionally join him for a meal, just the three of us. Seeing a smile on John's face, something that was missing back in the day, is a moment of happiness for me.